Hi, welcome to another episode of Be Positive on etbrandequity.com. I'm your host, Ambi Parameswaran, and today I have a special guest joining us all the way from Microsoft Seattle. Hi, Hitu. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ambi. I would say it's a pleasure for me to be on your show, and I am truly humbled to have this opportunity. And I'm looking forward to the next 30 minutes we have.
Yeah, great. So thank you. Hitu Chawla is the CMO Microsoft India. So Hitu, as you're aware, the show is about tracing the fabulous career of marketing folks across different terrain, whether it is tech or FMCG. In your case, you pass through a fabulous career right through management consulting as well as tech marketing, and I'm sure we will learn a lot by listening to your career journey. And I'm sure we all have faced challenges, have faced setbacks. So the show is also about being positive. How do we face challenges? How do we face setbacks? How do we face rejections? How do we bounce back stronger? So before we get into talking about your career, can you tell us about your childhood, college, schooling? Are you from Delhi? I noticed from your LinkedIn profile that you studied in the Jesus and Mary College in Delhi. So was schooling also Delhi or was it outside? So let's go.
Again, I think there were a lot of questions packed in that one statement. So let me just break that and start. You said talk a little about the childhood and, just my whole upbringing, schooling and everything else. So let me start with the childhood. I wouldn't say it was one of those easy, perfect childhoods, but surely one that has had an incredible impact and shaped in a lot of ways on who I am today. Both my parents were visually impaired and they used to run a music school. My dad, in fact, was a double MA in violin and was a vocal artist at All India Radio. But unfortunately, I lost him when I was 3, and my mom was actually only 27. The school had to be shut, and with no real support system, I think my mom suddenly found herself with raising 2 very young girls as a single blind parent. So it kind of life kind of threw a curveball at her, and there was a time we were actually truly homeless. We were moving from one relative's house to another. There was a period when just finishing school was a big question mark, leave alone going to college. And all of that, just going through that in your childhood, etc., I think has had a very profound impact on me and has ingrained certain core beliefs, which probably are drivers for me at work too now. And hence I said, I am who I am, both as an individual, as a professional, based on the experiences that I have gone through early on in my life. And I think one thing which came out from all of that struggle and, challenges, etc., I think I strongly and fundamentally believe that if you set your mind to something, as tough and impossible it may seem, hard work and positive attitude gets you there. From a time where, like I said, to just finish school, where she wasn't able to pay our fees, where, and this was like middle school is when I was in, where literally it was every day there was a challenge that you were dealing with, leave alone kind of to be where I am today. If just I reflect back on the journey and the struggles that she's had, and both I and my sister have, but I think a lot was from her grit and perseverance and the learnings, and I think the challenges that I had seen. What ingrained in me was this whole spirit of throw the cap on the other side of the wall and then go figure how you will get that wall, and that's where I come from. Like, just have a goal, have a purpose, and then go after it. You can make things happen. So that's a little about the childhood.
Amazing. No, let me pause here, because your childhood, and I think obviously is really moving. We've had multiple guests, but this is the most amazing, challenging childhood story which we've heard. and what you're, losing your father at a very young age, and then depending entirely on your mom. And obviously, your mom must have been a great source of inspiration, of courage, of resilience for you. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, obviously we will move on to your career and your education, but this is just too much for me to, So tell us a little bit about your mom. And you must be having a great relationship with your mom.
I do. I absolutely do. She is, like you have an anchor. Everybody has an anchor point in their life. So to me, she is that anchor point. And every time, she is my role model and mentor in a lot of ways. Like I've been fortunate enough, and if I talk from a professional life and the number of mentors and the learnings and all of that I have, but there's always something that you anchor back into on who you are as your core DNA. And for me, that comes a lot from her. I think there are people, everybody has their set of challenges. Each one of us, kind of, I don't think anyone kind of navigates through a so-called perfect life. But how you come out of it and what you make yourself out of it, I think to me that's the bigger part. And for me, seeing her, it is literally all through my growing up years, even until my teenage and until I started college. I can't remember a day or a period where life would have been easy for her. I think the sole purpose or goal she had was to make sure that she can make whatever best in her capacity for both I and my sister, and the sacrifices that she has made. So to me, now it is my time to make sure that I take care of her. The reason I am still in Seattle and doing this, like I was mentioning before the call started, I'd taken the role, the India portfolio, while I was in the previous roles that I had done was in the US. I took the India portfolio was because I wanted to be back in India to be with her, because the support system I had wasn't available anymore. And with the pandemic, that she was visiting here. Thankfully, she was here with me. I cannot imagine, when the actual lockdowns and things had happened, for her to be by herself. But the reason I haven't still traveled back is because of her, because I cannot take the chance of exposing her, with the fragile health and everything else that she has. And also I need to come back and reset base, so it's not just the flight, which in the current dynamics may not be the easiest. So yes, she is the anchor point, like I said, my source of.
No, absolutely wonderful. That's a great story. And now coming to, after schooling, you went to College of Jesus and Mary, right? In Delhi. How did that happen? Was it again nudged by your mom, or was it something else?
No, so if I had my way, my first choice, academically, yes, the three colleges that I was looking at was SRCC, LSR, and JMC. So, I landed in one of them, so I'm happy. So, it wasn't like a coincidence or something that happened by chance. I worked towards it. But if you would ask me, my first choice would have been to join a dance academy, to be a professional dancer, because that's what I wanted to do. I truly believe that, it is something, it's a way where one can, it's a thing that allows you to find yourself and also lose yourself at the same time, if you relate to what dancing does. But I would say it wasn't an option back then. As a bread earner, that wasn't the practical choice to make. But I later on, and at a point where I could earn and afford and stuff, and I didn't want to regret not having taking a shot at dancing, because I was so passionate about it. And so after like I said, I started earning enough, I signed up to learn jazz and ballet. And after 3 years of learning, I decided, if I wanted to take this up more seriously, And this is where I was already like 9 years into earning, so to say, in the corporate world and stuff. And I auditioned for a train the trainer program at an academy, dance academy, which I cleared, to go on that path and kind of explore that. It required minimum 60 hours of dancing every week. I was working with McKinsey then. So obviously weekends were tough. Any day was tough in general, but I would make sure that I would cover up for those hours during the weekend, and I used to dance 8 to 9 hours at a stretch, and then walk into office with blisters and bandaged feet on Monday morning. You know how you see in the movie how dancers have those. So, but anyways, I gave it my best shot for 5 months, and then I acknowledged that I couldn't quit the corporate world for a lot of reasons, and I made peace with it. And I realized that I want to nurture dancing as a hobby. But at least I don't regret, like I don't have this thing in my head that that's where I wanted to go and I couldn't. And I did that, I explored it. And then I realized if I can make as much money dancing, I'll quit work in a heartbeat. But I realized that I had other priorities, etc. So no regrets on JMC. It was something that I planned, intended. But yes, in a different life, in a different context, I would have done things differently.
Okay, so how was CM? What did you do at GMC? Yeah, was it
I done
arts?
Commerce honors.
Commerce.
So
and then you joined 3Com, right? Did you join 3Com after GMC?
Yeah.
How did that happen? Slightly unusual company. 3Com, if I remember, is a tech company, right?
It was rather a tech company. It had what you may remember them most for was their palm tops, the handheld devices.
I had one. By the way, it may be lying around somewhere, but I had one of their original Palm Pilots where you kind of, share your visiting cards, by zooming it at each other. So I used to love it. I had first generation, then I had a second generation, then I think they dropped the ball on getting into smartphones. So did you work on the Palm Pilot and all that stuff?
I did not in particular. By the time I had joined, they had hived off the Palm, in fact. And I think 4 years after the company itself had, liquidated, etc. So it was a strong It was a big company, was a strong competitor to Cisco back then, was the second in terms of largest market share, etc. All of that goodness. But anyways, to your question, yes, I did post my graduation. I started my career with 3Com. This was literally about finding a job. It was about earning, is what it was. It wasn't necessarily, I wish to do this and build my career in this, and therefore this is the path I want to choose. It wasn't any of that. It was as simple as you graduated, you need to start earning. Back then, NIIT used to be a thing. I had done a Java web coding course. They had a role for local web design, web coding for their India sites, etc. So that's how it had truly happened. Like everyone else, I was bitten by the MBA bug too. I was good with numbers both in high school and even in college, and hence had done commerce honors. I used to score really high in accounting and tax, etc. Those papers. So I thought I wanted to become a CA. Typical mindset, whatever you're academically good at, you think that's how you would want to go. But in the final year, with everyone around bitten by that, MBA bug, so to say, I also decided to jump on the bandwagon. I did get good scores in CAT, and I got a call from Ambi, but I messed up my interview. I had calls from.
I'm surprised. Listen, Hitu, I'm very surprised because a lot of the IIMs, since I have some exposure to the IIMs, IIMs want to improve the gender ratio. They're really worried that it's all becoming too many males, right? So both IIM Calcutta, where I was involved, and other IIMs. 1, 2. The other big issue which IIMs have is that engineers, right? So it's almost like all automatons in IIM, which is pretty sad. So I'm very surprised that in spite of, having a degree, undergrad degree in almost liberal arts, BCom, kind of liberal arts in my school, and of course having some experience, so you kind of tick 2 boxes, plus you're a girl, all the 3. I'm very surprised that you blew the IIM Bangalore interview. Did you go and dance in the interview instead of answering their question?
No, I honestly wouldn't blame them in this case. I have to take accountability. I did not show, wasn't my day, didn't show up well. It wasn't actually my, I took the CAT and sat for the interview, etc. before. Like I joined 3Com, so to say. It had started, but I must have been 3 months into the job, etc. So, yeah, but I did have, I had a few other offers with institutes from Symbiosis, etc. But I think I knew that if it wasn't the IMMs, the opportunity cost was too high for me to quit work and, afford the expenses, so to say. So it wasn't until after I had joined McKinsey, where one of our mentors actually suggested that, given my constraints and requirements to earn, I considered an executive MBA from FMS, Faculty of Management Studies. So it was a 3-year course with classes every day in the evening, and McKinsey supported me 100% on that, adjusted my work hours, the engagements that I was staffed on, etc. And in a lot of ways, I owe that degree, to them.
So let me get this right. So you joined 3Com, but you quit 3Com to join McKinsey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was 18 months. So I was with 3Com for about 18 months. And then that's when I had joined McKinsey. McKinsey actually was doing this whole pilot batch that they'd started. So they would recruit from the B schools. They were doing a pilot for their business analyst role with graduates. This was at least the first batch, and they were testing whether they wanted to recruit from campus graduate, or they wanted people with a few years of work ex. So the profile was, there was a batch of 6 that they recruited, which was people with about 18 months, under 2 years, 18 months to 2 years experience. So I was part of that batch with the clear thing that either this is more like a 2-year exposure, so to say, and then you go back to your master's or whatever you wish to do. But that's how the role portfolio was designed. I was the odd one out because, like I said, for my own constraints that I had, my biggest goal and purpose when I started after I'd finished my education was to get a roof on my and my mother's, like that. And hence I said the sole purpose and aim was to earn so that you can afford. So for me, that I was in that constant dilemma of, I know that I need a degree, I need a master's. I am with one of the better brands one could ask for, but for long run, etc. I do need that education under my belt, but I just couldn't quit. With all the other obligations and responsibilities that I had. And I was in my 3rd year at McKinsey, which is why I said I was the odd one out, most of my peers, and they'd started recruiting actually from graduates from campus, and was a clear path. And since I was doing well, I was fortunate, with my leadership vested, etc. And that's where that recommendation that my mentor made at that point, and I couldn't be more glad, that I could do both and not didn't have to compromise. Would it be different had I done a full time and I would have tacked that IMB and where I would have been? God knows, but I am happy where I am and I still have the learning.
Very good, because I remember, I know someone who was, I think McKinsey's first recruit in India from Ahmedabad, and he was the first batch, and then maybe you would have met him in your McKinsey stint. He made it to partner and then got out. But of course, I remember that they also started looking at, St. Stephen's and a few of these colleges for what they call business analysts. And the idea is you come as a business analyst, work for 2 years, and then go and do an MBA. Very often, I know a friend of mine whose son did the same thing, and they sponsored his MBA. He went and did it from INSEAD and then joined them back, and he's in San Francisco. So you were there, what, for 5-6 years? Any mentors you remember at McKinsey who played a role in shaping your thinking, shaping your career?
And there are plenty actually, but the one that I just spoke about, who was my coach. So McKinsey had this concept of what we used to back then call DGL, Development Group Leader. You had an assigned mentor to you. A lot of times you choose mentors, etc. But the company had this whole notion of more structured coaching and mentorship, etc. So she helped me make sure, like I said, understanding the challenges and everything else. She was the reason I kind of chose this path, and it worked out really well. And then the leadership supported as well. So till date, I owe, like I said, I owe my degree to the company at large, but more specifically her for giving me that nudge in that direction. And no surprises at McKinsey. You have the best brains in terms of the IQ and just that horsepower, so to say, intellectual horsepower that you're dealing with can actually be intimidating as well. I used to be, when you would get into a review, a check-in review or a final review before you going and making a client pitch with a senior partner, it was amazing how in 5 minutes, a 80-page deck or a A3 size dense Excel analysis, and how within 5 minutes they would just kind of spot that right data point, which can drill holes into the hypothesis and a month or 2 months of work that you've done. And I was like just in awe of it's like magic. How does that happen? When will I get there to be able to do that?
Did you get so here is a thing, right? I mean, I have been accused of that, which is what you said. Someone puts together, comes and makes what he or she thinks is a fantastic presentation, and 20 minutes into it, you've asked a question, and they say, sorry, we have not looked at it. And says, go back, and they go back. And has this happened? Was this was that an experience you had? You presenting to the managing partner who's probably, halfway through your presentation, he asks you a question, and you say, oh God, I didn't look at it that way. So how did you react?
Not once, not twice. So multiple times, I would say. So one of the things you learn is you keep the ego outside the room before you step into such meetings, because that's when the true learning happens, right? I mean, even if Satya talks a lot about growth mindset, and there is a reason, because he or she has gone through this drill that you are going through, as the early, I used to call myself this enthu cutlet, who wanted to do like everything, and you're excited and you want to do everything it takes, but it takes that experience and that skill set and so on and so forth. But to answer your question, did that happen? Oh, like heck, multiple times. But that's how you grow. And I think, again, what McKinsey, if I would say, it helped set that career base for me, because it laid that foundation of that problem-solving bent of mind, with that analytical. While, like I said, I was good at number crunching and all of that, but kind of bringing that together in terms of being able to look at something, break it down into pieces, and then build that bottoms up again is what a consulting firm does a beautiful job of. And to be able to do that early on in the career, I think that's kind of wired into your DNA in a lot of ways. But more importantly, McKinsey is where I was exposed to the world of marketing. And my fancy for it actually started from there, is because I was staffed on a lot of brand go-to-market, entry market strategy engagements. And that's where I kind of picked up my fancy. But I think, and what I realized was, it was fascinating to me that it's the function which is responsible for actual brand valuation of the, it does shape. There are other components as well, but what was missing for me was that how does a client truly translate? You've made this recommendation, you've done, here is how, when Apple is launching their iPod, and what's the market space they're going after, the persona, what are the brand attributes that you've done all that good work. You've done 1.5 years of work and recommended it to them. But how did they actually translate that into the silhouette campaign and everything that iPod did, and it became like a fad? That's not something McKinsey would have read, or any.
No, but the point is, a lot of consultants, including McKinsey and Accenture, now say that, look, we will not leave after we do our recommendation. We want to stay engaged. So did you see that mindset coming into McKinsey, saying, look, this is our recommendation, but we want to stay engaged with you so that you guys don't mess it up in your stage 2, stage 3, stage 4? Did you see that starting?
I do know that happens now. I have still colleagues, etc. And now being on the client side and having McKinsey be a consultant to Microsoft as well, that they offer that service literally too. Back then, I wouldn't say that was the norm. It again totally depends on the client, etc. And if they choose to, but that wasn't a norm. So at least while I was there, and to me, hence, that whole piece was missing. Like, how do you translate the strategy recommendation and bring it to life? And therefore, the switch to Microsoft had happened.
How did the Microsoft, were you engaged on a project with Microsoft? Is that, I know that a lot of McKinsey consultants end up jumping to the other side when the project is over, the client says, look, the project is good, but why don't you come and do it for us? And then you cross the aisle, so to speak. Was that what happened?
For me, no, actually, FMS made that connection happen more than. So when I used to go for my classes while at McKinsey, since this was an executive badge and you had, I had another mentor for me who again helped me change that. There was someone from Microsoft, and I was kind of discussing with him, and we were working together on a project. And in general, I was talking about. And I was someone who was most vocal in the class. Anything marketing, I would be the most enthusiastic to raise hands and make pitches and all of that. And when I was discussing with him, is why he said, so why wouldn't you switch if you have so much? Like, you won't learn what it takes. You won't learn the ropes unless you switch to FMCG or wherever, and get your hands dirty with it. Otherwise, it's always be a concept for you. And there was an opportunity that opened at Microsoft, and he mentioned like a more casual conversation where he said a peer of his was looking, and he says, is that something you would be interested in? And he said, there's no harm, just go talk and see. And if nothing else, you learn what the other side looks like. And that's how it happened. And it's 15 years now, and I am with Microsoft. But
I think it's great to meet someone who actually spent 15 years with a great company, Microsoft, because a lot of people I meet and a lot of youngsters today, they don't plan their career over a long-term period at all. They talk of job changes every 2 years, job change every 3 years. And in the campus, there is this huge hysteria about day one company, day two company, all that nonsense. But then they join the company, and the first thing they want to discuss is, what is my next, jump, right? So you spent 15 years. So where did this journey in Microsoft start? Did you start in marketing, or did you start in events? Did you start in social media? Where did you start?
It's interesting you talk about the long tenure, the current trend and stuff, because I remember in my early days at Microsoft, me teasing a colleague as he was celebrating his 10th anniversary. And I was like, who stays with the company for 10 years? Like, you're in your comfort zone and you're being complacent. And until my team celebrated my 15th a month ago. And I think there are two things I would say. One is specifically in case of Microsoft, and my reason for the long tenure that I've had. I think first, the sheer size and scale of the company allows you to take on newer agendas without saturating your learning and growth path. But more importantly, I would say it's the culture of the company, where it is extremely intentional and genuinely vested in nurturing and growing talent. If both aspects are happening, then you don't feel the reason, because either you saturate or you feel, you've done enough of this and this is not exciting, etc. enough. But if I am getting the opportunity 15 years in 7 roles now, if every 2 years plus, I'm getting this opportunity to kind of try my hands at something new and learn something new. So I'm not feeling that. And more importantly, like I said, there aren't too many companies out there, who have this as a core culture, where it's not just left on the employee that how do you, if you have it in you, and yes, we will, all of that goodness happens in a corporate world. But where is the company making sure that I have, and they're equipping me with what I need to grow to that next level? So I think Microsoft does that beautifully.
Where did you start? Where did you start Microsoft? Yeah.
So I did start in the marketing function, marketing communications more specifically is what I had started in. Did all sorts of, from ad campaigns to product launches of Windows 10 to, across product portfolios from core technical server and tools to Office and Windows launches, etc. So I've kind of done a wide spectrum, so to say, and across the 15 years now, I think I've done roles across core marketing function, I've done product management, I've done channel partner, and I've done business strategy and operations as well. And hence the point I was making, the beauty of, I haven't necessarily just grown vertically from a functional, capability standpoint. I've had the opportunity to have a more rounded growth and something that I wanted. And if I would just look back, I would say there are, across my time here, there are few roles which have helped me grow immensely, like that kink that you get, so to say, in your growth path, where you feel there is that delta that you've not just, you've given and taken from the role, that it stays with you in a manner. There are 3, I would say. I think the first one was the role of the chief of staff I did for the area president, because that's a role that really rounded me and exposed me to the left to right of the business and brought in that leadership perspective.
Who was the president that time?
This was Karan Bajwa, who's currently the Google VP for Asia. There were 2 leaders I had. There was Sanket Akerkar, and then he moved back to the US, and then Karan had taken. So during my tenure, I had 2 of those. And I think, like I said, it was a role that taught me not what it takes to just build, but operationalize strategy. You get that muscle as in your consulting stint, but this was truly the left to right is what I learned. I think the next 2 roles I would say were the ones that helped me shape as a global citizen. My move to the US really groomed me in a different way of learning, blending into a new culture, understanding what it means to run something at scale. US is the largest market for the company, like 42% of the revenue for the company comes from this market. But it was interesting because I remember when I moved to the US, I'd been with Microsoft for 10 years. I thought to myself, I know the language, I know the company, I kind of understand the culture. It's not like you're moving to China or Japan, if you know what I mean, but I think after moving, I realized that none of that was really true, because there is a culture to every place. Yes, I knew the language, but I didn't know the context of the language. I was told that that people here can be passive aggressive, and I kind of wondered. I didn't even know what that means, because the term in itself is such an oxymoron, right? Passive aggressive. The analogies that I was used to was cricket versus, in a meeting where I'm being called the quarterback by the vice president, and like 3 times, and I didn't know whether that's a good thing or bad thing, and I had to go look up on the net, what that means. Or the fact that I had to, in one of the roles, I had to build a team bottoms up, literally to a team of 14, and I had 7 nationalities, and that made diversity and inclusion real for me, not something you talk or read about, but it's an absolutely different muscle that you build. So I would say it allowed for a lot of personal and professional growth for me.
Anything specific you remember which you did which worked out well, or anything you did which kind of bombed very badly? Something you want to share with us?
in terms of, sorry, at my time in the US or at Microsoft in general, or
overall, because we're talking in the show. This show is all about how we face challenges, how we face rejection, how we bounce back, how we learn. How every challenge, every rejection, there is a lesson in that, and then you get that lesson, you can bounce back stronger, better. So I'm sure 15 years you must have handled numerous projects. Many of them must have gone brilliantly well. Some might not have gone well. So anything you want to share in terms of lessons we can learn from you?
So I think I'll share a couple, maybe three. Since I was on that US experience that I was sharing with you, like I mentioned to you, I think I'd walk, you've got a certain trajectory, you feel confident, you've landed yourself with a big portfolio, all of that goodness is there. But I kind of realized that, almost all my variables had changed from the work I had done in Microsoft India to the whole notion of size and scale had changed, for me. One state itself is the size of what one country may be for rest of our other areas, and you multiply that 10x is what the scale was. The market was new in terms of an emerging versus a developed market. The portfolio that I had taken was something very new. The culture and people were new. So, like I said, all variables I had practically changed. So my credentials got me there, but it was kind of building that bottoms up all over again is how it felt to me.
So there is this famous book, I'm sure you've read it, right? By Marshall Goldsmith, coach, guru. What got you here won't get you there.
Won't get you there. Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, I have. And that is so true. I mean, that was so real and in my face almost every day. And when I was sharing with you, this whole context of passive aggressive as an example, even a harsh message is kind of landed in a roundabout way versus what I know and I'm grown up and the way I know it is to just say it the way it is. And hence I would come across as someone who's more direct and abrasive. And, when you're trying to build a team and trying to build stakeholders, etc., unknowingly, and I'm just like calling a spade, but I'm being titled or being thought of as someone who's more in your face, and she speaks.
I thought, I'm a little surprised because I thought, having worked in an American multinational for many years, Americans kind of say it as it is. Unlike, let's say, Japanese, who, you don't know what they're saying. They're so subtle, and you got to read the body language, you got to read the tone. Whereas with American colleagues, it's always been very straight. They actually become excessively friendly, and it kind of scares the hell out of you. But yeah, I think what you're saying is that you moved from India, you had a particular portfolio, you moved the same company to America, but the cultural setting and the setting is so different that you had to do a lot to adjust to the new setting. So did you get to work on some exciting products like Xbox? And I remember visiting the Microsoft Seattle office, I think 3-4 years ago, and we were demonstrated the special features of gesture recognition. There is some experience center we've taken where you could move your hand, do like this. It was almost like, Minority Report happening, so you don't need to go and move the page. You just do this and the page changes. You do this, it changes. So, and of course, a lot of that stuff actually, I think, came from the Xbox experience. Did you get to work on the Xbox and exciting youth products like that?
Yes, let me break that answer into two. Just first, on your previous observation, that's what I thought as well. Like, the West is more direct, etc., versus probably more as the Indian culture is still. Interestingly, that's another nuance. That's the East Coast. East Coast is more snappy, to the point, say it, get done with it. West Coast has this more what they call passive aggressive and the style. And again, the point being that there are always cultural nuances, right? is what you learn and adapt. And I was glad again. I got my learnings early on. I again had coaches I could lean in on, etc. And something which could have translated into, like I was totally out of my comfort zone, and it could have gone down south and gone bad. But thankfully, I could catch on, and I learned, and I had people I could lean on to turn around and actually make that as a strength now for myself. Then to your second point about it, I work on exciting stuff. While I did not work on Xbox in particular, but I did work on a lot of other exciting, the Minority Report like technology. And that was even before I'd moved to the US. When back in India, there's something, the team had led one of its kind event called Future Unleashed. So if you think of Hannover Messe or NRF for retail, what that is, and I'm saying 6 years ago, which in India wasn't something, where you have experiential events where you see, not in Minority Report, but right in front of you, where you're swiping right and something happens, and without opening the hood of the car, you actually see what's inside, or without actually changing clothes, you actually see an outfit on you. Is the kind of event that the team had landed back in 2015. And the technologies that you use for that, from remote assist to virtual reality to HoloLens, etc., all of that goodness. So, and also the team is currently working on the 4th edition of that called Future Ready. And again, we're working on, like, how can I create a mini version of, let's say, Anand, who's our area president right now. How can I have, while he's there is a miniature version and a persona of him actually delivering the keynote while he's there. So if that's what you call the exciting,
it's like the ABBA concert being performed by avatars, and the old ABBA sitting and watching the show from the first row, right? So that's a future of. So we've discussed, your life, and you're starting from your parents, from your school, moving to your college. You're working at McKinsey, and then doing an FMS, and then joining Microsoft, and then building a career over 15 years. It's been a great journey, and I think thank you very much for sharing time with us. I know it's late. I will not hold you for too long. Just a few minutes more. Let me ask a few rapid fire questions, and then one last summing up question. So, which is your favorite music and dance form?
I would say it will be ballroom, and more specifically salsa. I think there is salsa. I think it's a very upbeat. There's a lot of passion. It's very expressive. I love ballroom dancing, also all form factors, but I think salsa kind of lets me. You can flow with it, and you can improvise on the go.
And what music form? Therefore, is it that kind of Cuban music you like, or what?
Honestly, it'll be very difficult for me to pick a music type. The 60s and 70s rock is what my go-to would be. Neil Diamond's, and so that's what my go-to would be. But
don't tell me ABBA, please.
It's a mood dependent thing. I can't say here is my favorite. There are times when I would just listen to Cuban only.
Neil Diamond is, you're too young for Neil Diamond. Neil Diamond is, Sweet Caroline and stuff like that is my generation's favorite. Not for you. You're too young for Neil Diamond. Okay, so let's go to your favorite holiday destination.
I love Switzerland. I had never experienced snow in my life. I think, like most average middle class Indians who've been in Delhi or below, where you haven't. My first experience with snow was in Switzerland, and I think that country is just so gorgeously pretty. Even the grass kind of says, "Oh, I don't want to grow beyond this and not look nice" types. It's so prim and proper. It's just gorgeous. And the second place I love is, it's a tough one for me to pick between Hawaii and Goa. I think I want to retire in one of those two, whichever it may be. I have a creative studio. One will be a creative agency and the other one will be a dance studio. So yeah, those would be the two places.
No, I can. Whenever you're ready, I can put you in touch with an old colleague of mine who does. He repurposes old Goan homes for exactly things like what you want to do. Okay. What about OTT? OTT series? Anything? OTT series, books, something.
Who's not glued to Netflix right now, at least in this past year? I guess all of us have been. There are multiple. Again, favorite is going to be very, very difficult. I might end up doing what's top of mind for me right now. I've just finished Manifest. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
But in the US, you have multiple platforms. We don't have Hulu in India, right? And Manifest is on which platform? Is it?
It is on Netflix. It is on Netflix. It's just amazing. So that's the one that I've just finished. A fun one is Lucifer, which you wouldn't, but that's really honestly more because I have this fancy for Brit accent. Is why I think.
Which one is that? Which one is that?
Lucifer.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Of course, it's of course the main. There is the attraction to the character, but his accent is more, which I have a fancy for. And then I watch a lot of period, episodes. So a lot of history period stuff is something which I really fancy again. So those would be the ones. But
books. Tell us one book. The book you're reading right now.
Dare to Lead, Brené Brown.
Okay, no, I haven't read that. Okay, good. So finally, last question. We've got a lot of young marketing professionals as well as students, watching our show. And so I always ask my guest to give a last kind of a summing up advice to all of them, because we bring in high achievers onto the show, and through the show we try and tell people, look, it's it's not walk in the park. It's not a bed of roses. There are enough challenges for everyone to overcome and find their kind of mojo and get on, find their place, become a CMO. Everyone getting out of a B school says, I want to be a CMO by the time I'm 30, by the time I'm 35. It's not going to be that easy. So some final advice from you would be great. Hitu, after that, I'll let you go, but some final advice.
Sure. I think marketing in particular is a ever evolving field. I remember when I started, it was more to be you think of it as this creative right brain function, right? Which is all about the brand, being the brand custodian, advertising, all of that goodness. But if you think of what it is today, even for that matter, the title itself are evolving. The CMO is called a CMTO or a head of growth, and there is a left and a right half, more by design, where science is being hard coded. It's not just the art aspect. So the point being that the function has been evolving significantly. The platforms we use to reach to our customers are constantly changing. The tactics that we are using to deliver results worked until a year ago. They're not working anymore. But I would say successful marketers have mastered certain timeless skills. And to me, that is communication and storytelling, something that you've mastered the art in. And my advice to anyone who's aspiring, to dabble in this field would be to find opportunities in everyday life where you can practice this timeless skill, but at the same time, keep adding on the latest and greatest beat in terms of tech, the trends, the new development, and add that layer of agility on that timeless skill. So to me, don't lose the root, but constantly evolve with the time to keep adding on, the newer skill sets and muscles that you need to build. I used to pride myself as a very strong B2B marketer. I need to constantly invest in myself and add to my skills, because what I knew of as marketing is not, that playbook is not working. And if I don't know how to evolve and write that new playbook, But what I won't lose, to me, what is core is, like I said, it ground yourself in that storytelling and in that communication, and then add everything else and grow from there.
Great, yeah, great. I think Hitu, thank you very much for giving us the time and your wisdom on your career. I think what you said very rightly, the fundamentals will not change, because I think Peter Drucker said this many, many decades ago, that the purpose of business is to get a customer and keep a customer. And brands are really glues which kind of sticks a customer to a corporation. So I think fundamentals will not change, storytelling will not change, communication will not change, but you need to add layers and layers of new things to it, because what you think you finished your learning at MBA school, sorry, your learning actually starts after you leave the MBA school. So Hitu, thank you very much for joining us, and it was a sheer pleasure and very knowledgeable. I always learn a lot talking to all my guests, so thank you very much.